Good morning, everyone. I always love it. Kate points at me and says, go. So I have to start something here. So here we go. We're starting something. And welcome, everybody, all you guys who are here in Merlin today. What an exquisite morning. We had a huge storm yesterday, cleaned everything out. What a great thing. So we get the benefits of crisp skies and all of that today. So welcome, Merlinites, and then welcome all of you people online. Thanks for joining us today for our talk today with Guy Finley. If you're new to our program or new to the site, the layout is Guy will give about a 60-minute talk today. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back for questions and answers, about 90 minutes. And at that point, after that, we will keep the cameras rolling, and we'll bring the people in the room who can also come up at any time, by the way. You all know that. So you're welcome to join us for however long we stay here today. And please do join us. Stay with us as long as you can. Let's see. If you have any problems technically online, Kate will help you in the background. Just go into the chat boxes or the question box, and she will help you. You can also write any questions there at any time. So you can do that. So let's get started today. Our title for this morning is How to Realize the First, Last, and Only True Freedom in Life. And our first key lesson reads, when before our eyes we always have someplace better to be, or find ourselves struggling to add 1 cubit to our stature, we miss seeing 2 great truths. First, all imagined destinations are dreams whose promised fulfillment fades the nearer we draw to them. And secondly, that blinded as we are by our hope in a tomorrow that never comes, we miss seeing that our true self is a field of possibilities whose riches are not only immediate, but everlasting.
Good morning. I'm not sick, but I had a little misfortune this morning. I inadvertently breathed in a vitamin pill, and it went into my lungs, and by the grace of God, I was able to, after 30 minutes, to cough it out, but it has a certain effect, as you might imagine, and you will get to hear some of that effect. It won't change what we're going to look at. In fact, in many ways, it'll help us understand what it is that we are here to do, the purpose of our life. So you take a deep breath. I'll hope I can catch one, and we'll go on. We're going to look at some incredibly important ideas today. Not that all of them aren't, but, and I might add gently here, one of the reasons that you should never miss a class. Never miss a class. Is because every flower, when it opens bit by bit. Nothing just pops open. And the work on this planet is always opening bit by bit. And it always being given bit by bit, and a person who misses 1 bit might miss the necessary energy or understanding required for the continuation of a process that the divine started within them, and that only the divine can finish. Only the divine can finish. I'm sorry that you don't understand it. And one day, God willing, the sorrow that visits you in your life will show you that you didn't understand that, and it will change the way you see things and your relationships with others, including this work. We're going to look at several passages, actually, today. I could take them from all the various scriptures, but I decided, for the sake of familiarity, instead of counting on things Eastern, I would stay with Western teachings. We've all heard a number of times, and we've examined the idea that one must lose their life if they hope to find it. That a kernel of corn that abides in the ground must do it alone, and if it does, it'll bring forth fruit, but if it doesn't, it won't. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. You've all heard that expression, haven't you? Seek you first the kingdom of heaven. We know these things by heart. Where is the kingdom of heaven? Within. All of these things we know, but we know nothing. Because until these ideas are made into something that is more than an intellectual stimulation, a certain consolation to a spiritual aspect of one's nature, they don't serve anything other than to continue keeping a person in the very dreams that Doug read in the key lesson that started this meeting. So we're going to look at this idea from in a very broad way. The last part of the key lesson says that our true self is a field of possibilities whose riches are not only immediate but everlasting. Not only immediate but everlasting. Now, I don't know if you understand what that implies, but what it says is that you don't go looking for it. There's no movement from here to there, from being this kind of person to that kind of person. There's no becoming in the kingdom of heaven. It is already complete, and I would add that you are already completely in it, but you are completely separate from it now because of a lack of understanding of your true nature, which is what this talk is intended to help you begin to understand and to develop an awakened relationship with it. I think that you've heard it said, and if you haven't, maybe this will be the first time. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From the darkness, lead us into the light. From death, lead us to immortality. It's an old prayer, but it points to a very distinct relationship, a movement. It says, from the unreal, lead us to the real. It implies, as did Plato, that we live in a cave, taking the shadows of life to be the real thing. It's not real. Everything that I think and see and experience, I believe is real, don't you? And what lends the reality to all the shadows that I see is that my experience and my conditioning already knows the meaning of these shadows, so there's no distinction between the shadows and the self that believes they're real. The shadow self believes in self that is shadowy. That's the nature of things. But it goes on to say, from darkness to light. So it's saying, look, you're in the darkness. You think these thoughts, these feelings, these experiences, you think they're you. You think they're real. Don't go to sleep already. It's never good when I'm only 5 minutes into the talk and I see eyes at half-mast. Shake yourself awake. You don't know what's at risk. Hopefully I'll give you some insight into that. From darkness, so from darkness, apparently this life where I think that what I am and dream is real isn't real, so I need some kind of light. And then there's a relation of the awakening, of the awareness. Light is awareness, awareness is light. You would have no awareness of anything if it weren't for light. Light creates distinction between form and space. So the more you're aware of an object, the more that awareness isn't just the separation of consciousness from the subject that it sees. It means that I am in a distinct relationship, that this light encompasses both the subject and the object. It is a singularity. And from that, the idea from death to immortality. All of this is glorious, except that I stumble over my wisdom teeth trying to get it out, let alone live from it. Do you stumble over your wisdom teeth? Have them out. It'll help you. So there's this idea that before one can be reborn, know anything of this divine life, one has to do what? One is going to have to move from what one thinks is life into real life, which means that I'm going to have to, in some way, I don't know how, I'm going to have to die to whatever it is that I think I am. I'm going to actually have to lay down, lose my life in order to be given a life. Now, you've known that. You've heard that. Christians all around saying, oh yeah, I've been reborn. You haven't been reborn. You've been reinstitutionalized by a psychotic set of conditioned thoughts and feelings that revisit you every time you figure out something went wrong. And now the answer is, I'll console myself with the next dream. I'll console myself with the next dream. There is no consolation of the real kind in any dream whatsoever. There is merely the temporary abeyance of the disturbance that came when real life showed you that you were in a dream, and to substitute a dream for a dream is to die asleep. To substitute a dream for a dream is to die asleep. Do you understand that much? Now, what am I doing? I'm dialing it back. I want you to see something. We've looked at it before. It's a tiny bit challenging, and then we'll get into the part that you like, mostly. How many of you ever dream? When I'm in a dream, doesn't it seem that here I am, and no matter what the dream is, no matter what the dream is, there is inherent in the dream that there's this world that I'm in with this beautiful man or woman or this terrible monster or this condition that I've dreamt 1,000 times. I'm running anxiously from something I can't escape. Doesn't matter what it is. Can you name for yourself something like that? So when I'm in that world, I'm having this dream. There is me having this dream, and then there is the terror or the triumph of the dream that I'm in. Yes or no? So to us, in that moment, there is a distinct difference between what I am in the dream and the dream that I'm having. Is there not a distinct difference? But can we see, and it's pivotal to your development, can we see that what is actually being experienced in that moment, we're going to call that the object of the dream. What I'm experiencing is the object of the dream. The object of the dream is to get away from something. The object of the dream is to have sex. The object of the dream is to have powers, to go somewhere. The object of the dream is some pleasure, or the object of the dream is some nightmare, something chasing me, a condition I've not been able to escape that revisits me in a number of different ways. Do you understand? The experience is the object, and the subject of the dream is the me having that experience. So there seems to be a difference between object and subject when I'm having a dream, doesn't there? But is there a difference between the object and the subject when I'm in a dream? If you have any mind at all, you should be able to see. Of course there's not. The dream is being generated by a dreamer. Only the dreamer believes it's other than the subject of its own activity. Please, I want to know if you understand that without any question. Yes or no? But that's when what would happen if you were in a dream having a nightmare and something said, you know, it's you running after you. It's you pleasing you. And neither what you're running for or that pleasure is real, because it's all taking place in a world that is unconscious and generating, as it does and will, a sense of self that it seeks for the experience when you are the one laying down your life to participate in a duality that never understands it's a duality. And so you're constantly trying to escape a duality that the mind creates to generate the experience of someone who is in a world acting for them or against them. Please, I can't spend more time on this. Yes or no? Sorry. Well, like I said, I did explain that, didn't I? It just comes with the territory for now. All right. So more or less, can we understand that object and subject are obviously the same. Felt like Jimmy Durante for a moment. Ha-cha-cha-cha. Most of you have no idea who that is. Well, here we do. Yeah. So I can see that's true. Why don't I see that's true when I'm awake? I have this dream, and I open my eyes, and I think, I awoke. But instantaneously, my mind is generating a dream. It's thinking about the past. It's worrying about the future. It's developing a plan. It's considering what it's going to get and how great it's going to be or how terrible it's going to be when this unfolds. And as the mind is doing that, I sit there and I look at the world that is being laid out in front of me, and I don't think it's a dream, because my experience of what my mind is producing is proving to me that there's something at risk or something to be gained, and I've got to get in there, by God, and struggle to make one go away or to develop the other. But if you can understand it, here we have in a dream object and subject that are the same, dreamer and the dream. It is exactly the same thing in this present state of consciousness, which is what Plato was alluding to, which is what every awakened man or woman has ever pointed to as being true. You don't know that when you open your eyes and you walk around, that you are not opening your eyes, but that your eyes are being given to attend to something that the mind generates, and then the attention of that same mind goes to the thing that it has generated and starts to think about what it has generated as if the thinker is other than the thought. And it is not. So if you get that much, are we following a little bit? Where am I every day? I'm in a dream, but I don't know I'm in a dream. I'm sitting here having a conversation with my husband or my wife. I'm on the phone doing business. I look at a text, I get an email. I swallow a supplement inadvertently down the wrong hole. Boom, what a drama. How extraordinary. You, it, they, them, there is the problem. My mind has identified it. And in that moment, I am so sure that I am other than what my mind is generating, the experience it's producing, that then I fight to protect myself from what I believe is the threat. And how is the threat produced other than in a dream of what people should or shouldn't be, or how things ought to or ought not unfold? Can you see this? Now, deep breath. If we've understood, to some extent, the observer is the observed. You've wondered about that, haven't you? I'm helping you understand it. The dreamer and the dream, singularity. Only in that world, the dreamer believes that the dream is other than itself. You in this world believe that your thoughts about the world are other than the thoughts you're having, and they're not. They're one thing, continuing a constant sense of self and reincarnating an unconscious nature for the purposes of something beyond your scope to understand as you are now, but that nevertheless is evident in the experience. Please? So have you ever had one of these moments? Oh my God. Yes? Wrong group? Oh my God. I just said the most cruel thing in the world. Oh my God, I've been thinking about money for 24 straight hours. Oh my God, I'm so afraid of that news about my health. I can't stop. I've got to go do something. Oh my God, oh my God. Have you ever had that moment? Yes or no? And then you wouldn't be here if not by the grace of something divine. Something goes, wait a minute, wake up. And there you are. You've been in a dream. You are in a dream. People want to know, why am I out there when I'm talking. You go to sleep if I'm not. If I don't upset you, you're going to sit there and eat popcorn. Oh my God. Oh God. Jesus, I'm sorry. How did I do that? How did I say that? How could I have just spent, and for some people, and it's never too late, even on one's deathbed, how could I have spent the last day, week, month, year, decade, lifetime in a dream and not known it? But the minute that grace, that light comes in, and suddenly you see, I don't know what happened, but I know that is not who I am, and it is not who I want to be. Not judging. Judging is the self trying to escape the conclusion of what it did that it had no choice to do. Remorse, Jesus, I can't believe it. I know better than to go to sleep. I know better than to hand my life over to someone that I can't stop arguing with in my head. I know how fruitless it is to try to make myself secure with the things that this world says will make me happy, because I've seen the world turn upside down 1,000 times, and when it does, when it reverses, the whole of my life goes to hell in a handbasket. Yes or no? And then suddenly, boom, there is this moment that on one hand right now you want nothing to do with, but if you live your life properly, you will pray that it happens unendingly. You realize in the moments leading up to this awareness of this dream and dreamer, someone, something else was living my life for me, making choices for me, taking actions that I regretted but didn't know until it was too late. You know why the blessed are the poor in spirit? You know why blessed are those that mourn? All of the things that are conducive to one's awakening. It's because in those moments an individual realizes, where in the name of God was I? Where have I been? Now you can't have that moment. That's why we have a school, and for those of you who've joined me long enough, you can't have a moment where suddenly you realize, where in the name of God have I been, unless for a split second you have been aware of yourself before, and you know the distinct difference between being here and now and present to all of the dreams versus being in a dream believing that someone's going to save you from it later. So in that moment, my God, Jesus, I went to sleep. I didn't just go to sleep. I said things. I did things. I cut people off in my car. I said cruel things. I fought. I argued. I defended myself. I did all of these things, and I didn't know that I was doing it. And then boom. In that moment of remorse, two things have happened. First, you understand you've generated a bill. You have generated something. You can't escape the karma of the actions of personality of this false nature. It is built into everything that you do. You wonder why you have to keep reliving it? Because every time the bill comes due, you hand it off to the same self that created the account. Do you see this? So we're looking at a phenomena. Let's bring up the second key lesson, please. I really like this. I hope you do too. I don't usually say that. The real problem solver reveals and then releases you from the matrix of an unseen problem maker, while the false problem solver creates more problems with 99% of its solutions. Have you ever done that? Have you ever saved yourself only to find out that you've clutched an anchor off the deck of the Titanic because it was painted like a life vest? The real problem solver reveals and releases you from the matrix of an unseen problem maker, releases you from the darkness of the dreamer and its identification with the dream it generates. That's the real problem solver. It doesn't fix your life. It frees you from the identification with a level of consciousness that you didn't even know you had consented to make your your king or your queen in life. Please, everybody still with me? So here's the point. When I disappear from myself, I have no awareness I've disappeared from myself. This is a phenomena. You have to get in there and mix it up. You don't want to. You will or you won't. I can't. That's not my job. You have to mix it up. Holy God, where did I go? I was sitting there meditating, eating my curds and whey, dreaming about Jesus, loving God, doing my puja, lighting my incense, chanting, playing my music. And then I get a phone call, or I swallow a supplement down the wrong hole. It's like it'd be a running joke. And where does all of that beauty and grace go? It's as if it was never there. I'm not denigrating the way you pray or whatever you do. That's your business. One day you have to see how fruitless it is to keep generating a sense of self by identifying with anything that consoles you. You'll have to see it. It's part of the journey. There's only one consolation, and I'm alluding to it in this whole talk. Where did I go? This is part of your knowledge that you must where did I go? Can anybody tell me where I went? Remember that, where's Waldo? You had to go find Waldo. Where did I go? Who can tell me where I went? John. Into a new dream. Now, if I didn't know that I moved from one dream to another, was I ever there to begin with? See, this is your problem. You think you're there because you judge yourself. You wish you weren't dreaming. I have to fight all this stuff. No, it's seamless. It's like the river Styx. It's just one dark movement of thought to thought, of self to self, each being generated one from another through a pattern of association with certain thoughts and feelings generated by the experience of the dream. So the dreamer gives rise to a dream. The dreamer has all this stuff that the dream has all this stuff. The dreamer still hasn't figured out all this upheaval, and not just yours, by the way. You get to dream humanity's dream, just individualized. You love that word. It's my individualization. No, it's just one thing. I dream I'm different than the dreamer. I change. All that happens is something happened outside of me. My attention flew to that thought, to that moment. That moment became the subject of the dream. The dreamer figuring out what to do with that moment, and it just goes on and on and on until a person quits this body. So I disappear because it was an illusion that I was ever there to begin with. Now, we don't think it's an illusion that I was there to begin with when I'm eating good food, do you? Planning that meal, going on this trip. I can't wait for this experience. Woo-hoo. I don't think I'm in a dream, do you? No, I deserve this. But when that dream goes bad, when everything turns south, when I get indigestion after all that food that I couldn't stop eating, then I sure wish that I could wake from that dream, and I swear to God, I'm never going to. Have you ever said that? I'm never going to do that again. How many times have you said, I'm never going to do that? Can you count that? It literally is countless. Talk about a dream. Who's never going to do that again? Who is there to never do that again? I'll tell you who's there to say I'm never going to do that again. That which is doing that again, even as it says it. True enough? So I got to keep going because I haven't even got to the middle of this talk yet. Darn. Listen to this. I found this so fascinating. So here I am, and I'm starting to wake up a little bit. And I realize, you know what, there are great periods of time. In fact, if I'm honest, the majority of the time, I'm a fig Newton of an imagination. I thought I was existing because of how upset I was. I was so real. I was so real in my resentment. And then by the grace of God, something happened and I thought, holy cow, where was I? Now, when in those moments, have you had those moments, where was I? Yes, please. In that moment, I can see sweet Jesus for an hour, a day, a month, a week. I didn't exist. There was a sensation of existence, but there was no I, other than a false I, inseparable from the subject that it kept creating to generate itself. Please, I don't want to go too fast. I didn't exist. God. Now listen to this. What is humanity's greatest fear? Death. Non-existence. And that's my life. Only I don't know I don't exist because I'm having a dream of existing based on wanting or not wanting the subject of the dream. Oh, this should knock you off of your seat. Everything about my life is dedicated to the continuation of this self. My life, my health, my wealth, my family, everything continuing that, and there's no one there involved in it at all. No one real. There is the social I. There is the conditioned nature that runs this planet, that occupies all of humanity, and that generates the unending experience of the continuity of friends and family and tradition and belief and opinion. All there, effortless. And how do you know it's effortless? Because all I have to do is stay asleep. It just runs. Just that river. Just runs. And then suddenly I'm outside the river for a second. Where was I? I'm here now for a second. I'm aware of myself completely. I'm aware of everything that's going on. I can see, I can feel. It's like I'm in a completely different world for a second, isn't it? Completely different world. And the world that I'm in that's brand new has no connection to at all the pain or the fear or the desire inherent in the dream I was having. Suddenly I'm just here, and all of that is part of this awareness, not the source of my experience. Please? Isn't that amazing? I'm so dedicated to my immortality that I have never suspected that becoming immortal is the lie of my existence. It's so perfect. I know you can't see into my head. I wish I could just for a moment do a download. What an unbelievable twist that human beings live with the fear of death and so try to create life by dreaming a life that's going to be. And in the dreaming of a life, they are not alive, they are dead, and fearing the very thing that they are making out of themselves in that moment. It's stunning if you see it. How we struggle not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities. Isn't that itself an allusion to the idea of the first shall be last and the last shall be first? Because what has to become first is not this struggle to be this and get that and keep the dream alive, keep you loving me and me giving myself to you so that you will love me. That whole thing has to come to an end. Why? Because that's the struggle, trying to keep you seeing me the way I want you to see me, seeing myself the way I'm myself, seeing myself. Fiona, are you there? For a minute, that's all that matters. And then one day, wait a minute, there's something else that has to happen here. That's a useless struggle. Every struggle in a dream is useless, isn't it? You can see that when you get up out of bed, but when you get up out of bed, you think that now the struggle is useful, don't you? Nice deep breath. So now we're going to look at this idea of the first shall be last and the last shall be first. We're going to put this into context. You have to actually come away. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. So in this instance, the first shall be last. What's the first right now that needs to become last? What's the first now? This dreamer and its dream. That's the first now. That's what personality is. Personality is the engendering and the formulation of a host of conditioning that this unconscious nature takes on and then begins to try to struggle with in an attempt to escape or improve what it's dreamed itself as being. That's the first. Has to become last. Well, wait a minute. If the first has to become last, first of all, that's a problem. But if the first becomes last and the last becomes the first, what's the last? Hello? No. If the first is the dream and the dreamer, this unconscious nature, then the last has to be the light, the awareness of that fact, doesn't it? The kingdom of heaven that's within. Boy, this is pivotal. I don't want to go on until I see some form of registration. Not your eyes rolling back in your head like a slot machine. The first, well, I was asleep in the first. Who's on second? The first shall be last. So in popular traditions, this idea, as people understand it, the idea of the first shall be last and the last shall be first. When Christ said it, it's several times in the New Testament. The first was considered by those that were around him that didn't have esoteric understanding at all. I guarantee you his disciples didn't misunderstand that. But most humans saw the first as being the prevailing conditions, the privileged, the Sadducee, the Pharisees, those who considered themselves important in the world, the religious, the wealthy, the elite, those who, for all intents and purposes, those men and women who seek to be first in all things. Do you seek to be first in all things? Isn't that what the whole of our life is about? One way or other. Maybe I don't do it with possessions or powers, but I sure want the intellectual prowess. I sure want to be able to prove that I understand what you don't. What is defending yourself when somebody psychologically offends you? What is defending yourself? I'm first. You just don't understand your position. So I'm going to put you where you belong last, so that I can be first. Yes or no? Yes. So the first refers to these muckety mucks, this muckety muck, and the last in that context refers to what? The downtrodden, the marginalized, the men and women who are troubled, the poor, whatever. So that the last are those who serve others without recognition and do so humbly. This is a popular understanding of the first shall be last, last shall be first. Everybody getting this much? So the main idea behind that model is that in the kingdom of heaven, the usual social order is turned around. Back in the day, everybody, what do you think's happening right now? The problem is that the social order that I want changed, you want changed exactly the opposite of I've dreamed it. So I dream a social order where you understand that I'm right, and you dream a social order where you understand where I'm wrong. Please, can a dream? So in the kingdom of heaven, the order's reversed. And much to my appreciation, those who put themselves above me, don't you just love it when people get put into their place and you're kind of in charge of seeing to that? I really showed him, I'm first, last. Don't you stay there. You stay there, you. I'm looking at the last person who wants to be last. And when all that's going on, so they're finally put in their right place, they've been humbled. And it was I who humbled them. In my humility, I showed you how to be humble. So now we can see that that model is how much everybody sees it, don't we? But there's obviously another model the true teachings refer to. In the true model, using words only, the first represents what? This outward personality, this undeveloped consciousness, so that in its unconscious machinations and the matrix that are produced from all of those thoughts and feelings, it creates for itself a kingdom in which it wouldn't create it unless it were going to be first in the kingdom. Do you ever create for yourself a kingdom where you're last? Do you? That's ludicrous. No, everything I invent and plan and prosper from, I am the one. I made fire. I'll wait for you. That's from Castaway. So I have made this world, and it's great. I'm asleep in it until something challenges the world. And the minute it challenges the kingdom I've created, what do? I defend my kingdom, believing that the kingdom I'm defending, what I have made of myself, all that I am, defending what I have made of myself by doing what? By making sure that anything that threatens the image I have of myself is put in the last place so that I can remain first. You just don't understand. It suggests, first shall be last, last shall be first, that there is another order entirely. And that when the real order is in place, there is no longer a need to dream at all. Can you make the leap? Why do I dream? Something's messed up my order. I came out of the womb and became developed into a child by absorbing the dreams of the consciousness already contained in that content and then just manipulating them according to the personality in order to provide myself a world where my kingdom is the only one. Where do you think children go to? Where do you think they escape? What do you think fantasy land is? It's a dream. We're not saying there's anything wrong. Children have to go through that. But when I was a child, I spake as a child. Now it's time for me to grow up and leave behind the dream, isn't it? So it suggests that this order has to be reversed. I don't know if I have time to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. If we had time, we would examine this. Can you think of, we'll make a list at the end as an exercise, but how about this? The first shall be last, the last shall be first. I don't know how many of you know in Genesis the story of Isaac and Sarah, where Abraham and Sarah, where Abraham was promised by the divine to be the father of the kingdom that would come. And he was 80 years old. He told him, look, you and Sarah, you're going to have a child, and the child's going to be the father of the nation. But Abraham didn't believe. And so according to Judaic law, he slept with his servant, Hagar, and they had a child, Ishmael. And then it turned out, lo and behold, that Sarah was capable and he was capable of creating a child. And lo and behold, Isaac came out the last. So Ishmael was the first, Isaac was the last. And the story goes on where now Abraham realizes he made a terrible mistake and he sends Ishmael away. He becomes the last now. And Isaac becomes the first. And then that's not done. Then the first becomes the last. Then God, wanting to test, if you want to use those words, to see what the level of faith was in Abraham, then he tells Abraham, you have to now sacrifice the first. Oh, if you can understand the vine and the branch here. So now Abraham, who loves Isaac because he's a real first child, his child, he has to make the first last. He has to give him up. He's asked to give him up. Of course, he doesn't have to, does he? Because he proves his faith and his love for the divine. So the first becomes the last becomes first. I don't have enough time to go through this, but I'll show you some other examples as we go on. So can we see that this idea, this passage is really a call, in quotes, first to be last. It's really an instruction. It's not a statement, it's an instruction. It's saying the task is to prioritize, to put the love of God, the faith in awareness, to put that ahead of the love of self, the love of personality. And that if one will do that and at least work to understand, because here's the thing, it comes up every time I speak. How can me putting first the awareness of the unconscious nature, how can putting the awareness first change anything? Because the only change I know is when I've imagined and identified what that change might be, and then I'm all on board with what I've imagined. How can bringing an end to an imaginary nature produce the change that I'm looking for? Because that's what awakening, that's what awareness does, is it reveals the futility of believing that the dream and the dreamer are separate, and that somehow you can discover a world where at last you have safety and security by another dream. So what it's saying is that the first shall be last, the last shall be first. When I have first put this awareness ahead of what it is that I am tempted to identify with. Awareness before the temptation to identify. When I will put that awareness first, I am given the insight into the consciousness that creates the temptation for the sake of its own continuity. Yes, please? And because to us, where's the power in that? There's no power in just awakening. In fact, I'll be damned, I don't particularly want to experience this conflict that I'm in right now. Because I still want to make a lot of money. I still want to become someone special. Everything about my life is dedicated to ensuring that everything that I've built up under myself, my life is dedicated to ensuring that the dream I've dreamed remains in place, which means I have to remain asleep in order to keep it in place. And fighting when the dream is challenged, listen to this, fighting with the conditions that challenge the dreamer prove to him that the dream he has is real. So if we can see what? Are we seeing a little bit here? Now, big transition before we get to the exercise. One more supplement. So I'm getting this idea, if I'm successfully transmitting it, that there is a world where right now the first is me and this consciousness that dreams what it does so it can continue to develop this marvelous entity who will one day be immortal. So there's this dream and it's first. And then there's, all right, Christ is good. I'm all for rebirth. And I like Muhammad. I love Moses. I'm all on board with this Zen thing. I practice my puja. I love it. But that part of my life really is last. Now it's first the minute that things go wrong with the first, isn't it? Oh God, I'm a sinner. Take my life. I can't stand myself anymore. Please, please, please. And in that moment, I'm in another dream. Because all that's happened is that the dreamer has rescued himself from the dream that proved itself false. Consoled the loss of a dream with another dream. Because I'm still asleep. There's no awareness of the conditions that produced the conflict. There's just me calling on another dream to reduce the conflict into something that consoles me. Yes or no? Do you see it? So if I see that much, I have a rudimentary awakening, a little bit of awareness that as I'm sitting here talking to you, the tendency on your part is to be asleep. Do you remember from yesterday, Insight Timer? She went to the doctor and said, what am I missing? He said, what you're missing is yourself. You're missing the most important half of your life. Because all you have is the dream aspect. You have no awareness of the dreamer. Because if you had awareness of the dreamer, you would know what to dream and what not to dream, what to imagine, what's good and what's not. You wouldn't just turn yourself over to what the dream gives you to be. There would be some distinction, a discernment that light makes possible for you. But as we are now, we have no awareness of that. So this talk is to, first of all, bring that to your mind. That if I am not, do it right now. Be here. Just for a second. I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of you. I'm aware of you and myself at the same time. As I'm aware of all of that, I'm aware of the temperature, I'm aware of the colors, I'm aware of the thoughts. I'm simply in, for that moment, another level of being in which I is not defined by any condition outside of it. I is not defined or confined by any condition outside of it. I, real I, contains all of the conditions in an awareness that doesn't have a preference left or right. He maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike. Still with me, everybody? So do we get that much? Because you're going to have to work. So if I see that much, if I really understand it, I have to understand the necessity here is that I've got to develop this understanding. I have to work. Imagine for a second a man or a woman. I don't know where they are. They're in a small plane and they come down somewhere in the Amazon jungle. Now, having never been in the Amazon jungle, when one is dreaming about it, having read about the dolphins and the beautiful butterflies and all of the marvelous monkeys and all that, you love the Amazon. Now I'm on the ground, and I realize, holy God, everything's trying to eat me. I never knew that. So what it's like to be in the Amazon is that you're being eaten if you're not eating. And if I'm in that condition, am I thinking about my $400 shoes? Am I? Am I dreaming about that shirt that I'm going to buy, that place I'm going to go tomorrow or next year? Am I doing anything, or where is all of my attention? It's in the awareness of where I am and the fact that if I'm not totally present, something is going to predate upon me. Yes or no? That's what I'm trying to get across to you. To myself as well, in scale. If I'm not awake, I'm asleep. If I don't know I'm here, I'm not. Something is here. Something is thinking, choosing, acting, eating, drinking, having sex, having babies, getting married, getting divorced, buying cars, planning for tomorrow. Something's very active. Are you not a pretty active person? Isn't it extraordinary? I'm so active and I'm not there. Who's there? Knock, knock. Who's there? And you see, now I realize, wait, now for the first time, please God, don't let me go back to sleep. Please, I don't care what it cost. Because the cost of being asleep is the cost of the possibility of the fulfillment of the purpose of my existence on this planet. Please let me stay with this idea that the first will be last and that the last will be first. And if I really understand my predicament, my condition, isn't that understanding built into it? Can you make the correlation, the man or the woman lost in the jungle who understands, gee, if I'm not present, I'm going to be predated upon. If I'm not here and aware of myself, I am being predated on by a nature that dreams what it does so that it can have another dream that follows it. Am I making... Bring up the third key lesson, please, then we'll get into the exercise. Read along with me. Wisdom, timeless self-knowledge can only be realized in one way and one way only: through the persistent exercise of bringing any unwanted moment into the undying light of what we have seen and understand as true leading up and into that moment. Timeless self-knowledge, wisdom can only be realized in one way. The first and the last can only take place, be reversed in one way and one way only. And that is when we come into a moment and there we are. And in that moment, suddenly there's what? This immense temptation to continue with the dream that created the disturbance to begin with. What's disturbed in any given moment? What is disturbed in me in any given moment? A dream. Does life disturb itself other than to continue the perfection of itself and the transformation of itself? What about you when you're disturbed? We see those moments where we're disturbed as proof that something that was perfect has been messed with, and now I've got to restore its perfection with another dream. No, what's disturbed is the dreamer. And the dreamer's disturbed because the dream it had is challenged by the unwanted condition. Do you see? That key lesson is alluding to this one idea, and then we're going to spend 5 minutes on it. There is a code, a true code, a celestial code for living. Going into the Old Testament, Moses was talking to the people who were basically following him to the promised land, where Abraham, blah, 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 blah. And they said, just tell us what to do. We'll hear you and we'll do it. Now that sounds to us logical. I'm going to hear this and then I'm going to do this. Doesn't that seem logical? And then he said, no, that's not the right order of things. So the right order isn't hear and do. The right order is to do, and then you will hear. To do, and then you will hear. To do is to gain the understanding through experience. Then you will understand why the instruction was necessary. Not hear and do. That's little automatons, little mechanical men and women. I hear what Jesus would do, I'll do that. You don't do what Jesus would do. You do what your idea of Jesus is, and then you judge yourself when you fall short, as you must, and compromise yourself to try to accomplish that ideal. No, I will do and then I will hear. If I understand that doing comes before hearing, doing, action comes before the wisdom, then what does that mean relative to this idea of the first shall be last and the last shall be first? Here it is. We must learn, you want to write down, I must learn to exercise my understanding. You like to exercise it, well, not most of you. Some of you like to exercise your body. I must exercise my understanding. All the time, my understanding is being exercised by a dream, challenging the dreamer. So what I call the intellectual exercise is me trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. No, I must exercise the understanding. And what is the exercising? What is the understanding I have to exercise? First has to be last, last has to be first. Now, down to earth. You tell me. Suddenly I'm at home, I'm filled with regret. Oh, I'm the worst person in the world. Who's first right then? Who's first? Me. I don't think I'm first because of how much I don't want to be me, but I'm there first, am I not? So if that's the first, how does it become the last? What is the last in that moment when I'm first like that? The last is my awareness of how useless it is to feel sorry for myself. First becomes last. I'm going to be aware of that moment, and instead of identifying and going along with what an egregious person, how terrible everybody is in my life, instead I'm going to make the reversal. I'm going to see that the first becomes last and the last becomes first. And I can only do that because I've been reminded by grace that reversal needs to take place. Understand? Here's another one. As if I don't know. How many of you rush? When are you going to stop? Never. Until what? Till you see that what you call being first, gotta go, gotta get, gotta fix, gotta run, gotta make, gotta happen, bah, 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 bah. And now you see that's never you in the beginning. You don't exist when you're rushing. You know what exists when you're rushing? A nature that fears it's going to lose something. So the first right now is me caught up in this anxiety. Yes or no? That's the first. And the first, as the dreamer, is doing what it's dreaming, what it has to do. It creates time and space and distance. And so it has to run from here to where it's imagined it will be free. Please, do you see it? What happens? How does the first become the last? When I become aware of the fact that I've been in that state for 10,000 years, believing that if I just go one more time through this hoop, everything's going to change. And the awareness of that dreamer and its dream is reversed. Now I have an awareness of that unconscious nature and what it is doing to me. Another example. In a challenging moment, where does your attention go? First of all, what is a challenging moment? I covered it with you. Challenging moment is anything that threatens the dream I have of myself. So where does my attention go in any challenging moment? My attention goes immediately, seemingly, onto that which is not going to be part of the challenge and is going to reconcile it. So now my attention goes to a consolation, doesn't it? The next thing I need to change. The dreamer simply makes another dream. And then wonders why, with all of the dreams that it has the nightmare come again and again and again. So how has the first become the last in that moment where something grabs my attention? What has to happen? My attention can't go to the dream anymore, can it? And it has to leave the dreamer. So that how does it do that? By bringing myself into the awareness of a nature that always feels challenged by anything that contests its authority. I have some other examples, but I've run out of time. Make your own example. Here's one last one, especially for some of you. I don't even have to be with people that bother me. They bother me. Yes or no? They're dead 20 years or 20 minutes. I don't have to be with you. All I have to do is see you or a thought come up because I see someone who looks like you. And in that moment, what happens when I see someone who looks like somebody who troubles me? What happens to me? I'm instantaneously back into an account-making mode where the dream is required that you are the source of my disturbance, and I, as the dreamer, am troubled by you, never suspecting that I wouldn't be troubled by the dream I've made of you if I didn't need you to be the way you are so I can keep dreaming a time when you'll finally understand what's wrong with you. Do you see it? First is last. Here I am, I'm caught up in summary judgment. That's the first, isn't it, right now? Love to judge. Why? Because it proves that I'm other than what I'm judging. It proves my superiority. I am the Pharisee and the Sadducee for a moment, am I not? I'm the one casting the stone. And then suddenly, by the grace of God, suddenly I realize, wait a minute, that first has to become last. Well, I know what the first is. How does it become last? How does the first become last? I can't do it, can I? But the awareness of the condition of that consciousness instantaneously changes the polarity. And in the instantaneous shift in the polarity, a new possibility is born. A rebirth takes place. You understand the exercise? Find in your own life where this first and last has to take place. Don't do it just intellectually. Become present enough to understand. If I go along with these thoughts and feelings, I'm going to disappear into the matrix of that dream and dreamer again. I'm going to have to give up myself. I'm going to have to lose my life to find it. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with our Q&A real quickly. I just want to give everyone a reminder that all these online classes, these free online classes, are sponsored by the nonprofit Life of Learning Foundation here in Southern Oregon, where Guy is a director. And just to let you know that we appreciate everybody who helps sustain this organization. That's how we do it. It's through all of you online as well. And if you'd like to help us, any size donation helps, and you can do that at any time at guyfinley.org/donate. guyfinley.org/donate. Go there and you can see a multitude of ways that you might be able to help us, and some not costing you anything. So we thank you in advance for that. So what we're going to do now is, if you're online with GoToWebinar, you can talk directly to Guy. You can just raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. If you're in the room here, you know that you can come up at any time. Just come on up if you have something to share. And right now we have one person online, Denise, and we have 2 written questions. So let's get started right now with Denise. Oops, Denise, I think you hit your, where'd you go? Denise, there you go. Did you want to speak?
I'm here.
Okay.
Good morning, Guy, everybody. Can you help me understand the idea of the first shall be last in the context of worrying over the health of a loved one? Because it doesn't seem like it's out of order to me to be concerned for someone else, but it gets all messed up when it becomes worrying. And so I just wonder how I can work at reversing that.
You've answered your own question. You tell me, and this is part of the problem, you have to understand, you are all unwitting participants in a dream where punishing ourselves proves that we love someone. Punishing yourself only proves that you're asleep, only proves that you would rather dream about yourself as being someone who cares than seeing, if I really cared, then why would I do this to myself, let alone to anyone else? Because when I suffer and I get identified in negative, caught up in some kind of pain over something else, a process someone else is going through, what do I bring to them? I bring them what I am. And not only do I bring what I am, but the more I get involved in that dream, the deeper involved I become. And the more deeply involved I become, the more insistent I become that something not happen the way I've imagined it might. I don't ever mean ever to be mean. It's not my nature. But with God as my witness, and one day you will witness it yourself, you have no idea the depth and the breadth of your arrogance. It's breathtaking. You actually think you understand what's happening to that person and why it's happening, when really what you're participating in that moment is the sheer unconscious resistance to what you believe shouldn't be happening to somebody that you love.
Right.
I try to convey the beauty of something like this. The beauty of understanding that, yes, look, I wish, I can't even say that. You want to all hate me? Here you go. Here's your ticket for it. I never wish that something wasn't happening to somebody else. I love my wife dearly. She's going to die. Will I grieve terribly when she dies? Of course I will, although I've agreed. What did we agree? We'd agree that you're going to go first, yeah. That way she doesn't have to go through the pain of losing me. But I'll be damned if I'm going to suffer that. Everyone and everything on this planet, just as it said in Scripture, east and west, is connected to, born out of, and will be reborn into something that is a perfect plan for that creature, that consciousness. Everyone and everything gets exactly what it needs. It gets exactly what it has asked for if it is developed far enough to ask for anything at all. Do you see what you're up against? It's inconceivable to me to not fight with life. Isn't it inconceivable to you? That's what she's saying. Look, and Denise has been studying with us for 800, 900 years. Close to that. And so I've had this struggle. I've kind of learned a little bit, got it past it, but now apparently somebody I love has a terminal condition, and I'm tormented by it. Why would I be tormented by someone's terminal condition unless I was terminally identified with them and believing that somehow or other something terrible is happening to them, and by my pain I can prevent it? Denise, you can't prevent anything. You can't even get yourself out of the dream yet.
Right.
But the beauty of it is that you're starting to understand that a little bit. Last part, and for Denise and everybody, just to tie all this together. We agreed somewhat, did we not, that suddenly, and maybe Denise can see it, I'm completely snowed under in some kind of suffering. Something that I didn't know I had dreamed, which was the continuity of my immortal relationship with all that I love. Suddenly that dream has been destroyed by some terrible news from a God that apparently doesn't care. You see, the arrogance is unbelievable. And I'm all in that, and I think this has happened, or she wouldn't be on the not on the phone, whatever she's in my ear. So suddenly I wake up for a split second, and I'm aware of the fact that I'm tormented. And I'm aware in the moment of that this torment, while everything in me is telling me that's all that I can do, something in me knows that's not true. Something in me knows that love does not include torment. Does it not? Yes or no? I can't intellectualize it, but something in me knows that. And then I see, well, where have I been? Making the point, I didn't exist. I, who understands the bigger picture, who wants this relationship with the divine, not me as God discerning what should and shouldn't happen to people, suddenly I'm aware of myself. I'm here. Oh my God. And in that moment, what was first is seen as being false. Not all of it. This is our problem. We have an all or nothing consciousness. What was first is seen as being false. Not that I don't love my whoever it is that's dying. That's not false. I do. I have a bond. Even if it's just familial, I have a bond. I have a blood connection. That's deep. So it's not all false. But what's false is the sense of myself, who now, because of what is threatening this dream I have, now the dreamer is threatened, and the dreamer is false. Do you understand this? So,
Yes.
I'm going to have to struggle. It's a crucifixion in the truest sense of the word. When the first becomes last and the last becomes first, that doesn't happen just because I say to myself, I'm going to make this exchange. I'm going to have to lay my life down for the sake of that which shows me it wasn't my life to begin with. And I have to do it. And I have to exercise that understanding. I have to exercise that understanding, Denise.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
You bet.
Yes.
I have your back, Denise. You know that. On we go, Doug. It isn't real until it's real. Most of us never know anything real with God as my witness. And what we take as real is what challenges the dream. And then suddenly I start to see, by the grace of God, by the light of that awareness, this is a real enough moment, but it doesn't require me hating. It doesn't require me tormented. So somewhere in that there is a real connection, isn't there? A real communion that has to take place between the first and the last. They're not separate in one respect. Yeah.
Let's go next to Annette. And you have her question, Guy?
I do.
So Annette says, so there is no real security in this physical realm, ... The games we play, most often unconsciously, but rather in the spiritual man, the Buddha or God within us all. Have we seen many achieve such a beautiful place here on earth?
Many shmany. You're on a boat 17 miles offshore. And you've even seen a few dum, 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 in the water around the boat, but you don't care. Cocktails, cocktail franks, those little wieners. You have yours, I have mine. I don't really care for those anymore, but I did when I was a boy. And all of a sudden, fire on board. Radio's destroyed, can't call the Coast Guard. There's 18 people and only 6 life vests. And those who care the most for you jumped on board, off board with the life vests, and they're gone. Does it matter how many have made it to shore, or do I start swimming? Does it matter how many miles away I am from the shore if I know the boat I'm on is sinking? Does it? Hell no. I start whatever stroke I know. And I swim like as best I know how to swim. Why? Because my awareness of my condition trumps the fear that I have that I can't do something. It overwhelms any thought I've had, well, nobody can swim 17 miles. Why should I try? Instinctual nature prevails. One day your spiritual nature will prevail, because already perfected in you is something that understands when you see the truth of your situation, you won't have any choice but to make this reversal between the first and the last. On we go with Patricia.
Since I was a child, I had a dream that a lion was chasing me. And I would be running and running and running from this lion. And I would see a tree, and I would climb the tree, then realize a lion can climb the tree. And I had this all the time. It was the only dream I ever had. And then when I got into work, for some reason, And I didn't understand it until today. I just stopped running. I just didn't run anymore. And I realized today in this talk, it was because the division stopped. The division, just like the dreamer, the dreamer and the awareness comes, and that has to cancel out the dream, the awareness, because the division ends.
Yes.
There's no more resistance. And it was so clear to me. I love this talk. It was really, it was a beautiful talk because you could really see the dreamer. He really showed the difference, I think.
While Doug's coming up, a quick comment. I haven't presented the material yet, but you will, most likely. It's not always the same for everybody, but there are definite similarities. You will, at certain points, be, as you work to be awake, you will be having a dream, first physically in bed, and you will be aware of the fact that what is about to happen to you, that mind just created and collapsed into a field out of a quantum set of possibilities into the very thing that you didn't want to happen. You'll actually experience seeing your own nature create what it called ahead of time it was going to do, that you'll see it's doing that. And you'll begin to be able to dissolve those nightmares because you'll understand something is collapsing all possibilities, all the characters, qualities, content in that dream into something that it requires so that it can have something to fight with or struggle against or run from. You'll see that. Now, if that's possible, and it is, I can promise you it is, one day the same exact thing is going to happen in your physical life. That's what we're talking about here. Before the dream coalesces into something that the dreamer requires for the reincarnation of itself, can I see that that dreamer is about to collapse all these possibilities into one thing, that one person, that one thing they said, the one moment that shouldn't have happened? Can I see all of that take place, and instead of stumbling into the trap that the mind has made, see the mind making the trap, and in that moment I'm free? Go ahead.
Let's go next to Dwight. Dwight, I've unmuted. Go ahead and come on. There you are.
Hello?
Dwight,
Yes.
where have you been?
This-
Where have you been?
Well, I apologize. I've had some health issues, and I'm back on my feet now. So
Well, that's good. You didn't really have to explain. It was a term of infection, not infection, affection.
Well, don't blame me for the Texas weather you guys are experiencing up there.
Well, that's what I had in mind when you called.
Well, I knew you were headed that way.
Yeah, I was.
Anyway, when you talk about complete the moment,
Yes.
that's the awareness.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, Dwight.
Okay.
Look, try to see this bigger picture. You, in quotes, don't complete the moment when you become aware of it. Awareness shows you that everything that is taking place in the moment is already part of a complete movement. Then you have a different relationship with all of the movement instead of you trying to think what the movement means and what needs to be done given your perception of it. It's a different order of being. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. Putting the priority of understanding what I must prize is the awareness of this moment. And I don't particularly want the awareness of myself as an agitated individual, as a greedy pig. I don't want to see myself that way. I don't want to see myself as a fear-sucking, security-seeking person. How many of you want that image of yourself? Anybody? Well, guess what? That's what the dreamer is. It has to be that way. That's what mammon is. Mammon is insatiable, out of the New Testament, because it can only feed itself a dream that then proves incapable of feeding itself. And it just goes on and on and on. Over to you, Doug.
We've got another question. This one's by Susanna. She says, awareness before identification. Or she asks, that's hard. I will attempt it. More examples of being aware, please.
Well, let's throw it open to the room. I said your exercise should be where it is that you know you have a first. So somebody give me their usual first. John is first.
My insistence on having the last word.
John said, first for me is that when I'm talking to somebody, as a rule, I don't even let them finish. Yes or no? Where's Barbara? There you are. I can't let you finish because first of all, you might say something that's true. I can't afford that. And I have to have the last word. Is that a first or not? So if that's the first, what would be the last? The awareness of how painful it is. How painful is this demand that you subjugate yourself to me? And how painful it is to believe that unless you do, something's wrong with my life, and you in particular, then I have a grudge. Where do grudges come from? Who has another first? Chris.
Worrying about my health.
Worrying about my health. That's a first for a lot of people, isn't it? And by the way, the older you get, the more first it becomes. It's first when you even open your eyes. Oh God. Not vertigo again. What's this pain in my back? I moved, I slept on my shoulder. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Is that first or not? And then the world. Oh, this sick world. I'm smiling so that you can understand that while you need to take it serious, one day you will understand how stupid it is to dream that this world understands anything. This world has sold you downstream. Everything about every relationship in this world puts the one involved in it first. And when you have two people wanting to be first, whether it's individuals or a government, political, or religious party, you have men and women who have set themselves against each other, believing that their dream of what is true should be that dream. And all you have is a nightmare of proportions that can't be imagined. And I swear to you, that's the world that you live in. You just don't see it. Because, by the way, if the first becomes last, you'll start to see, you know what? What did Christ say? This is not my world. I have a responsibility. I have children, friends, family. I do have preferences. I wish that the oceans were clean. You can't even go swimming anymore in this world in the summertime because of all the crap in the water dumped there by human beings, by the way, by us. So you see that. The withdrawal is mandatory. The temptation is evident. You see, before you have a dream, you're tempted for the dreamer is tempted. Before there is a dream, the dreamer is tempted. The dream is always the imagined fulfillment of oneself through a desire. So the dream is the desire that imagines it's different than the one who desired it. Then the one who desires what they do go after what they've desired, and that becomes the dream of this life. When you see that no desire can fulfill itself and only continue itself, that's the beginning of the collapse of that haunted house called the me that's going to save myself through a dream. Over to you, Doug.
We're at the top of the hour. We have one more question, Guy. There was Leslie. You did have your hand up. If you did want to speak, go ahead and raise it again, and we will get you. Otherwise, we'll end this part of the session with Doug. Not me. Hello. Doug says, hello, Guy. I have been working within a growing meditation practice in myself. In other words, 30 to 60 minutes every morning, and sometimes I'm woken to do so through the day's events, and again in the evenings. This practice mostly involves a simple awareness of whatever is going on around and within me, sights, sounds, smells, senses, breath, etc. I struggle or appear unable to witness this simple awareness through the bulk of the day's events. In other words, interpersonal interactions, work, problem solving, exercise, etc.
Right.
Unless and until I am awakened, often shocked into that awareness again. I'm not sure of a specific question coming up other than to convey that this is what I'm perceiving as part of the work you advocate, and whether this is common and an appropriate action on my part.
It's quite lovely what you've said, Doug. There's a paradox in this. There's a paradox in any true religion. The true religion is not Christianity, Buddhism, Catholicism, Judaism, Muslim, Hindu. That's not the true religion. The true religion is that, as Emerson, the central urge of every atom is to return to its divine source. That's the true religion, the true wish of the prodigal son, the return journey. That's the true religion, making what seems to be, to us who see object and subject separate, making the journey from here to there. The paradox is that here and there are already connected in you. So that my mind sees a journey in time and space, a becoming, which is the only way this mind can grasp that. When the truth is that upon awakening you discover there is no time and distance between yourself and the divine. The kingdom of heaven is within this awareness, the light of Christ. It's there. It's already done. Already done. Already done. Doug is describing a preparation that he's going through. You can't avoid the preparation, because were you to see that all at once, and I know that you think you understand this, I swear to God that you don't, you would lose your mind. Because the gradual disappearance of the habitual sense of self has to take place in increments. And the incremental disappearance is replaced by the consistent development of an awareness where now the first is becoming the last, and the last is becoming the first on a more permanent basis. Doug is describing a relationship he has with life where he's starting to realize that I can enter into certain levels of understanding, awareness, but then I go out and I get in my car, I open the refrigerator, I make a phone call, and the next thing I know, it's 3 days later, and I bought a Porsche. Or whatever thing happened to me. And so his question is in this idea that, well, how do I develop this awareness? The awareness isn't something you develop. Awareness is developing you. See, that's the arrogance. And so my task is to be true. My task has to have a new first, a reprioritizing of my values. And I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like to reprioritize my values until I see my present set of values that are first are my prison. So the awareness of that begins to make the shift. I don't make the shift. I'm being shifted. Am I not? My attention now belongs to something that recognizes that if I'm not aware in the fact that I'm in a world that is not ambivalent, I'm in a world that has itself made up, I'm going to fall asleep again. Make it your aim. If you've understood anything, Chris said that her first is the fear of health. Why am I so afraid of health? My health. I don't want to die. And most particularly, if I have to die, I don't want to die in pain. I don't mind dying. What did Woody Allen say? I don't mind dying. It's the pain I don't want. Wasn't Woody Allen?
I don't want to be there when it happens.
I don't want to be there when it happens. Yeah. You must be there when it happens because it's happening now. You just dreaming that it's not. You're just dreaming. It's not. And what a hellacious nightmare that is. Because you're fighting with something that you can't change by fighting with it. In fact, fighting with it, the resistance uses what precious little resources you have, not to maintain the body, although that's part of it, to recognize there has to be a new first. If I'm an addict, what's my first? If I'm an addict, what's my first? See, you said drugs. No, that's not my first. The fear of being incomplete that drove me to that drug. I'm addicted to a sense of self that is now being consoled and comforted by some substance I put in there. That's my real first. The temptation and the following up of an identification with some condition that momentarily consoles me. To see that the consolation is part of the continuation of a dark dream is the beginning of the end of that addiction, because it's the beginning of the end of that self that sees things that way. Do you see that with me?
Hi, my name is David. This, exactly what you're talking about, is what I'm going through sitting in that seat. And the force of this dreamer is, well, it feels like it's winning. Well, it's certainly very strong, and
I feel helpless in the face of the dreamer.
yeah. And I'm doing my best to just sit there and watch as it spits out what I am to say when I come up here. And with every spit, it terrifies me more. And this is what it's doing.
Did you ever hear the expression somewhere in the New Testament? Christ was talking and he said, the kingdom of heaven can't be taken by force. Have you ever heard that? What do you think that means? This is lovely. It's difficult to understand, but it's lovely. The aspirant for like 3,000-4,000 years believes they're going to take the kingdom of heaven by force. I'm going to meditate, exercise, drink carrot juice, eat grass right off of the ground. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to, that's what I'm going to do. Because I'm afraid that if I don't do that, something bad's going to happen to me. And one day, the helplessness that you don't want to see right now will be surrendered to that which has been trying to help you all along by showing you that you can't take the kingdom of heaven by force. You're talking to a man who thought he could take it by force forever. You can't take it by force. You let it happen. You let it come. You see that it's there. You enter into it. You don't create it. You don't control it. You let it have authority over you. And the more you're able to do that, because of how painful it is to try to be someone who's at least got his foot, don't you? You got at least one of your toes in heaven, yes or no? Yeah. See, your toe isn't in heaven, it's in hell. Seeing that is the beginning of having something showing you. I don't know the passage. I think St. Paul somewhere along this said, oh yeah. He said, in thy strength is made perfect in my weakness. My weakness is made perfect in thy strength. See, I don't want to be weak. How many of you want to be weak? My first is let nobody see that I'm weak. Isn't that your first? Stand your ground. Jut that chin out. Where's Doug? Under no circumstances will you talk to me like that, because I'm strong. I've dreamt I'm strong. And one day I start to realize, you know what, I'm an idiot in a dream, but I still have this wish to present myself as strong. One day I have to make the switch. The first has to become the last to become first. And I have to suffer my own strength. The strength of my dream, of the illusion. And as I do that, it falls away naturally, David. Fruit doesn't cling to a tree. It falls off the tree when it's ripe. This insistence will fall off of the tree of David when he sees that he can't insist anything happen for him. Do you see this with me?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
And it's incredible because we've been talking about dreams, and the other night I had a dream in bed.
Okay. We're all ears.
You were in it.
Uh-oh.
And I'll tell it quickly because it connects.
Please.
We just finished a function in the banquet room, and there was 2 students there. I was one of them. I didn't recognize the second. And you were still there. We were finishing up. Me and the student were walking out of the room, and you said, "Hang on, wait a second before you guys go." And you pulled out a piece of paper and you proceeded to cut it into very fine strips. And you gave this big handful of strips to me and to the other student. And you said, "I want you to throw these up into the air like that and catch them all." And there was something in me that said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." It'll be
Was Roger the other one? Okay.
So this is what we did. Up goes all the strips, and frantically, you can imagine trying to catch them all. And of course, there was a few, but there was a lot on the ground. And you said, "You can't do that." And it was a very clear illustration of how, despite the effort,
Yes.
it's a fact.
Now what? I'm going to ask you to sit down. Now what? If it's a fact, I can't save myself. If I can't catch the endless dream divided up into endless strips and put it back together and put it in my pocket and walk away, now what? That's where you are. That's what you have to find out. But you can't fail if you stay there. It's impossible. But it won't be you that succeeds.
We have one more in the queue. It's almost 11:20.
Yeah, let's do the last one.
Save the question. Robert, we'll get to your question on Wednesday. But this is Leslie in the queue. Leslie, just click on your hand. There you go.
Hello?
Hi, Leslie.
Okay.
There you are.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
I'm in the beautiful state of Idaho and love to absorb the nature up here.
Yes.
I kind of feel like I'm a North Idaho forest fairy, if you will.
We have a few
I've
of
been
those here.
becoming open, and as you talk about realizing that there's my higher self, I'm seeing a sense of detachment, like if I'm frustrated with something that I believe my son should do, I need to let him live his life and take the distraction. I'm having a hard time not focusing on being the mother and helping him by allowing him to be an adult and separating myself from that. I know that we have a contract or a mission with ourselves here, but I'm at a place trying to find a balance in separating the emotion of it from the lesson of it.
Leslie, I understand what you're saying, and I would hasten to add a couple quick thoughts. One, You cannot find peace with anything that thought pieces together. The idea of the first becoming the last and the last first is not an intellectual exercise, but we must approach it using our intellect to be able to understand the moving parts. But the moving parts are all already within us. 1, 2. And I speak from real experience here. It is a nightmare to try to control anyone or everything. That's the first for most of us in one respect. Control it. It's not quite right, it's not moving left, it's not moving right, it's not going up, it's not going down. You're not quite the way you should be. I'm not quite the way I should be. This moment has problems in it. Control it, get a hold of it, control it. The task when the first is to control is to see how much pain there is for yourself and everyone else involved in that relationship when you're trying to push a square peg into a round hole, and see what you do to yourself and others as you try to take control of that moment so that the moment unfolds the way you think it should, so that they are the way you believe they should be. That's hell on earth that isn't recognized as hell on earth, because the dream is I'm out of hell when I get you to enter into my heaven. So use those moments where you see and sense this taking place, not to think yourself, I should be this kind of person who has tolerance, all the rest of that gagging that humanity does as it tries to deal with its own insatiable appetite to control everything. Instead, use that moment, use your attention to bring yourself into everything, into the light within you that is revealing the lashing involved in trying to control that person's life, or any life for that matter. Other than a 4-year-old, you have to have responsibility. But even that doesn't mean being violent. Why are people violent towards children? Why are people violent towards dogs? Why do you have violent thoughts towards others? I'll tell you why, because you see them as the source of your pain, and you have to put them in their right place in order to escape that suffering. To see that is true is the beginning of this change. That's all we're interested in. One little bit at a time, one little bit at a time, one little bit at a time. Persist, persist, persist. Patience, patience, patience. But don't you put down that plow. See you, what's today? See you Wednesday.